have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA and the New World Order. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, anticipating so eagerly the first days of the Trump administration, which actually started months ago. You know, the focus has been on him so relentlessly.
Who's been running foreign policy?
Donald J. Trump.
Who's been, making the stock market go up and down with his tweets.
All right, well, we plunge in again this week. The new administration and the Republican Congress are working to rush through a lot of unvetted, unacceptably anti-LGBT cabinet appointees, especially that Jefferson Sessions up for Attorney General. We'll dissect some of the lack of good questions.
And as Barack Obama bids us farewell as president, we're going to look back at his record on LGBT and AIDS issues nostalgically.
Secretary of State John Kerry has apologized for the department's persecution of gay people in the past.
Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe has banned anti-LGBT discrimination by state contractors.
The Orlando, Florida City Soccer Club is honoring the victims of the Pulse nightclub massacre with 49 rainbow seats in their new stadium.
We'll bring you video of that. It's quite touching.
Yeah.
A clerk in Indiana who did not want to process marriage licenses for gay couples has lost a federal court decision.
More murders of transgender women as we start the new year. We restart the count year by year. And in New York, a well-known gay club owner, Savion Zabar, is found murdered.
Kim Burrell is paying the price for spewing hate against gays and lesbians at her church. And
the gay-themed movie Moonlight, my favorite of the year, has taken top honors from the National Society of Film Critics and at the Golden Globe Awards, although it hasn't won everything it was expected to. And Meryl Streep eloquently took down the president-elect. I have some analysis of that for you.
Oh, thank you.
That you haven't heard elsewhere.
I'm so glad I watched this show, and I'm so glad you watched this show.
But do you watch it? Sometimes.
I do. Well, I certainly watched it while I was away.
Oh, we each tune out a little as the show goes on.
Yes.
But we did not tune out from the beginning of the congressional hearings on the Trump cabinet appointees.
Well, it was nice to see that that Trump is coming into into his inauguration with a 37% approval rating. Now that is the lowest ever recorded. Even Obama and Bush came in with 70% approval ratings, both of them, even though 70% of the people didn't vote for them. But people want to feel optimistic about their president. People are basically terrified about what's going on in the country.
And I will say to you what I said to you earlier today, which you asked me to repeat. Oh, please. The guy has taken power. He has the presidency, the Congress, the courts. He has it all. Who cares if he has a 37% approval rating?
I think he's making some of the wrong enemies.
I'd love to think so. And I am heartened by two incidents, and that is the grassroots uproar over the attempt to destroy the independent ethics office in the Congress and the stopping of that by the public outpouring.
As we talked about last week, and everybody is citing that. But the problem, of course, going forward is everything is going to be coming fast and furious. Trump, in fact, in his press conference said he's going to sit down on the Monday after the inauguration and do all these undo all these executive orders and all that stuff.
I don't think he'll wait till then.
Well, he said he was going to wait till Monday.
Okay. We'll see. But the other thing that heartened me was the standing up against the pipeline in the Dakotas. Again, perhaps a temporary victory. But we've said this before, we'll say it again. It is only the grassroots public outcry that is going to have an effect against him. And that is where the 37% approval rating comes in. But He's going to be a powerful guy.
And it's very discouraging that we're not making much of a public breakthrough on Jeff Sessions. We expected some of the Trump nominees to be held up because of their outrageous views. Every single one of them is a disaster.
Well, you did. I didn't.
But, or that you might peel off a Republican vote or two, but that is not happening.
No, we've become almost a parliamentary system in that the party sticks together on these votes. There is some kind of emotional or physical blackmail going on that makes people stick together on these votes.
Certainly when Rex Tillerson was testifying today as we tape for Secretary of State, there were a number of Republicans going after him on a number of issues. And that was encouraging, but are they going to vote against him?
Probably not.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
And maybe there will be a couple of votes against some of these people, but I don't expect it. I think they'll all be confirmed, and it doesn't matter if we yell at them in the confirmations hearings.
And it doesn't help that we have an idiot press. In the case of Jeff Sessions, for instance, he was pressed about, where do you stand on the Obergefell marriage decision of the Supreme Court? He said, well, that's settled. So the commentators on MSNBC and elsewhere go on, well, he did say that that's settled, as if he approves of it. He doesn't approve of it. And what they did not ask him is, okay, so you get a couple of new Supreme Court justices. And by the way, I'm not trying to be too discursive here, but Trump said they're all being picked from the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation, for God's sakes.
We knew that.
Well, I know, but he emphasized it at his press conference that these will be very bad picks.
Well, then we have at least a chance of stopping because they have to get 60 votes at this point to approve them.
Which they can change. But the point is that Sessions was not asked, what are you going to do if there is a new Supreme Court and a state asserts its right to now enforce its anti-same-sex marriage law? Those laws are still on the books.
He was not asked whether the Justice Department would continue its lawsuit against HB 2 in North Carolina. He was not asked if the Justice Department would continue to support Gavin Grimm before the Supreme Court, the trans high school student who's suing for bathroom rights in his school in Virginia. He was not asked about, he was asked about the Federal Department of Education guidelines on trans students. He doesn't think guidelines are a good idea. That's what he said. And he said that religious freedom will be a very high priority, which means that the Justice Department will do a 180 turn and support any kind, first of all, the First Amendment Defense Act in Congress will be supported by the Department of Justice now, and of course our new president who has promised to sign it. And the Justice Department will be arguing for that to overcome any kind of non-discrimination promises. But
he is going to uphold all the federal hate crimes legislation, even though he voted against it 6 times. And his past position about the Obergefell decision was that it was beyond the realm of reality, folks. That's the way he talked about it.
Look, the current Justice Department has only invoked the hate crimes law for the first time in an LGBT-related case this last year.
I do see that
I don't see that we're going to get a lot of that.
I do see that Judy Shepard was scheduled to testify at the hearings.
Yeah, the point is, these people are being I wrote a letter to Schumer and another one to Elizabeth Warren this week as I was watching these hearings. All you have to do is go online and Google them, and their offices will come up, and you can write them notes. And what I said was, it's all well and good to examine these people's records. They're just going to sit and lie about how they've changed their minds since their past misdeeds. But they have to be asked about their future policies. And Sessions has not been examined enough about the future policies of the Department of Justice, which has been such an important friend to the LGBT community on discretionary matters. The Justice Department has had the choice of which side to come down on, and they started bad under Obama, and they switched because of public pressure. And they've been very, very, very good for years now, and now they're going to get bad again.
Of course, Ted Cruz, the right-wing senator Republican from Texas, was gloating about how where they do intervene, they've lost half the time. I didn't independently verify that. I didn't independently verify the report about Donald Trump and his exploits in Russia. But now, is it too early, since you're talking about Schumer and things, to show them go out of order and show them our little demonstration there and talk about that?
Yes. While I was writing a letter to Schumer, you were in Brooklyn demonstrating against Schumer. I've had this cold, so I didn't want to go out in the cold.
And it was freezing. And, I got some pushback from some friends who said, we went out to sort of say, Chuck, you need some backbone. I have said publicly here that I think Schumer gave a very good maiden speech in the as minority leader in the Senate, but his record is not all that progressive. So we went out there to Brooklyn, and let's run the videotape. All right, and if you couldn't make that out, we were shouting,
Come out, Chuck, we want to talk.
Now, we're not asking him to come out of the closet. We have no information on that. But we did want to talk to him.
I don't think anyone's ever suggested that.
He was inside the whole time. People saw him go in. When we demonstrated against him 20 years ago, he came out to yell at us, and we yelled at him. This was over his vote for the Defense of Marriage Act as a House member back in 1996. So, look, people say, why aren't you protesting the Republicans? We are, but they don't listen to us. We need backbone on the part of the Democrats, and I'm discouraged that they're not really organizing people enough to mount successful blocks of some of these nominees.
I'm a little less cynical than that, and I think these major marches, I think there will be demonstrations at the inauguration, and of course these huge marches all over the country the day after.
The women's marches, yes. To which men are welcome.
Yes, and everybody is welcome, and they are taking place in Washington and all over the country, and I'll be marching in New York. I don't know what your plans are.
Me too, I'll be in New York.
And we really encourage you to do that, because we need to start establishing the getting out in the street to
It's like the anti-war movement.
Exactly, and that is how we ended the Vietnam War, by putting enough people out in the streets. So I think that is going to build, especially as they take power and do the things they're going to do. On the other hand, Caitlyn Jenner has been invited to the inauguration. The rumor was that she was looking for a date, and I thought, looking for a date? Why isn't she taking Kanye? He's her son-in-law and an avowed Trump supporter.
I want to go back to Jeff Sessions on one thing. Okay. I was very discouraged when a Republican senator read into the record a message from Ted Olson endorsing Jeff Sessions. Now,
he's a Republican.
He's a Republican, but he acted like he was on our side. He argued the same-sex marriage case.
He was on our side.
Yes, but this is the problem. It's not enough for these people that somebody opposes gay rights and they become unacceptable. That's the problem, and we haven't gotten there in this country.
We have not, because we are still stigmatized, unlike what Sessions said, but disavowed saying that Dianne Feinstein quoted at him, where he had said he didn't see any discrimination against women or LGBT people. I just don't see it. Then he said yesterday, I don't believe I said that. That doesn't sound like me.
Yeah, I know. I heard that. One of our viewers, Steve, wrote to us that these religious freedom acts that are propping up all over the country, and which are very much supported by Jefferson Sessions, actually privilege particular religious beliefs, so we should call them the Special Rights for Fundamentalists Act. Special rights for fundamentalists. Special rights. That's an old right-wing thing they used to say about us. Special rights.
There is news of 3 LGBT inaugural balls. The Log Cabin Club is celebrating
they didn't
inauguration. Endorse them. Well, they've planned a lobby day in Congress, but who knows what they're lobbying for.
What are they lobbying for?
I don't know.
Building the wall?
Should we talk about Meryl Streep's speech here, rather than...
Oh, well, we could, sure. It was a major national event, wasn't it?
It was.
It drew the attention of the president-elect.
Yes, in fact, he tweeted about it. And I appreciated the fact that she tried to, at first, deal with the assumption that these are the elite talking about it. And she talked about who actors really are and where they come from. And
all over the world.
Yes, and from poverty or middle class or whatever. And I thought that was legitimate, even though they are the privileged elite now, especially the ones sitting in that room at the Golden Globes. But I appreciated that approach. And I appreciated her whole speech about bullying.
And I was quite moved by that, by the way.
But
as were many.
And when I reflected on it, and I thought it was powerful and good and important. The conservative idiot on The View the next day said, I hated that they were doing that at an award show and I turned it off. I thought, you can't compartmentalize life these days. These are important issues and people should be speaking up in all sorts of venues. And then I thought about Meryl. She was a year behind me in college. We went to school together. I didn't know her. I don't know her. I've met her once for about 30 seconds. But we went through the same times in the world together, the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement. Our college was on strike about Vietnam when I graduated a year ahead of her. She lived through all that and had the same training I did about values and resistance and speaking up. And it comes, I'm sure, from a deep place from her. And is not some superficial thing. And I was happy to have that association and to understand that she draws from a deep well in saying that.
Yes. I thought you were going to come up with a but there is no but.
No. I was totally in favor of it.
It really was terrific.
Yeah. I mean, you can argue about privileged people speaking, but I believe that all people have to speak up.
Yes.
In every venue, and this desire to avoid the reality of what's going on by saying, I watch bad TV, I have my moments of entertainment, I'm fine with all that, but we must integrate the analysis into our lives too.
It is very hard. It's very easy here, sitting here with you in this room, and to say what's on our minds and what we think among like-minded people. A lot of people find themselves in parts of the country where they work in very mixed environments with a lot of Trump supporters, and it's harder. And their jobs may depend on it, et cetera. And
yes,
people are scared.
I take your point.
We even know a publicist here in New York who lost a job because he's very outspoken on Facebook about this. And they said, well, we think you're too controversial to handle this account. We're worried what's going to happen to our federal funding in the future, that kind of stuff.
Well, I've always believed that if you have to leave your feelings at the door, you should
It's hard for a lot of people.
Not do that. And the Human Rights Campaign must be ecstatic because they had already announced that Meryl Streep is being given their Ally for Equality Award at their annual big fundraising dinner here in New York on February 11th. So I'm sure she'll have a stem winder to deliver there.
Right. Some other notes on what's happening with and this is the thing. There's so many bad nominees in all of them really in the Trump administration. But this guy who's being nominated to head the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, his name is Jay Clayton. Well, not only does he come from Wall Street, as they tend to do anyway, but his wife works for Goldman Sachs, so he'll be ruling on the biggest firm and profits and things like that. And and they want to get rid of Dodd-Frank. They want to deregulate. This affects all of us. This bringing on another Wall Street crash by unregulating Wall Street again could kill all of us. But beyond what they're going to do to the environment to kill all of us, and World War III in the Middle East and elsewhere to kill all of us. No, I mean
well, on that note, shall we look at Obama?
Oh yeah. Well, let's take a look back.
Speaking of the Human Rights Campaign, they put together a video highlights reel of Obama on LGBT and AIDS issues, and it's just we're all saying farewell. He wasn't perfect. We have our complaints, but by comparison, oh my God. So let's take a little look and remember the Obama years.
journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law. For if we are truly created equal, then surely the love we commit to one another must be equal as well. That's why we condemn the persecution of people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. We do these things not only because they are the right thing to do, but because ultimately they will make us safer. We believe in a big America, a tolerant America, a just America, an equal America. We believe in an America where we're all in it together, and we see the good in one another. I want you to know that I expect and hope to be judged not by words, not by promises I've made, but by the promises that my administration keeps. And together we also have to keep sending a message to every young person in this country who might feel alone because they're gay or transgender. We've got to make sure they know that there are adults they can talk to, that they are never alone, that there is a whole world waiting for them. And I want all those kids to know that the President and the First Lady is standing right by them every inch of the way. This fight continues now, and I'm here with a simple message. With you in that fight. This afternoon I signed into law the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act.
President Obama has signed a directive that will mean same-sex partners have hospital visitation rights.
We are not a nation that says, don't ask, don't tell. We are a nation that says, out of we are one. And now it is my honor to sign this bill into law. This is done.
From this day on, Barack Obama will go down in history as the first U.S. president to endorse same-sex marriage publicly.
It is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
This is an historic political and cultural moment in this country.
This is the first administration to release a comprehensive strategy on HIV/AIDS because the United States should be at the forefront of new discoveries into how to put HIV into long-term remission, or better yet, eliminate it completely.
Gay and lesbian couples now have the right to get married in every single American state.
Today we can say, in no uncertain terms, that we've made our union a little more perfect.
The White House lit up in rainbow pride colors to show support for today's monumental decision.
Historic announcement from the White House tonight, creating the first national monument to gay rights at the site of the Stonewall riots here in New York City.
The White House has hired its first openly transgender staff member.
Ellen DeGeneres. It's easy to forget now, when we've come so far, just how much courage was required for Ellen to come out on the most public of stages almost 20 years ago. If you're ready to continue this journey that we started, keep marching, keep fighting, keep organizing. If we rise to this moment, if we understand this isn't the end point, this is the beginning. It's the answer that led those who've been told for so long by so many to be cynical and fearful and doubtful about what we can achieve, to put their hands on the arc of history and bend it once more toward the hope of a better day. It happens when a father realizes he doesn't just love his daughter, but also her wife. It happens when a video sparks a movement to let every single young person know they're not alone and things will get better. It happens when people look past their ultimately minor differences to see themselves in the hopes and struggles of their fellow human beings. That's where change is happening. And that's not just the story of the gay rights movement, that's the story of America. And I'm confident we can continue to write another chapter together.
Everywhere I'm looking now, I'm surrounded by your embrace. Baby, I can see your halo.
Thank you, President Obama. And just remember, the only LGBTQ issue that Trump has spoken out about is they shouldn't be thrown off buildings by ISIS. Seriously, that's the only issue that he's ever spoken about.
Yeah, but the real thing to keep an eye on is him wiping out all the pro-LGBT executive orders in the first week. But
staying on President Obama, he is considering a pardon for, as we sit here, a pardon for Chelsea Manning. We're told that Chelsea is on a short list of people being considered for pardon. Chelsea has been in prison for 7 years on a 35-year sentence, the longest for a whistleblower ever in terms of the 7 years.
Yep.
And so we hope that that comes through by the time you watch this show.
And a few things that have been accomplished on the way out the door. In Connecticut, a 91-year-old veteran, Hubert Edward Spires, who was given an undesirable discharge from the Air Force in the 1940s, has now received an honorable discharge in retrospect.
And Secretary John Kerry has issued a statement, a formal apology addressing all the persecution of people who work for the State Department who were LGBTQ in the past.
I wish they would get some kind of reparations. And the Department of Justice and ACLU have filed a last minute in this administration appeal of the Texas ruling that outlawed the non-discrimination provisions in the Affordable Care Act. I suspect when Jeff Sessions takes over that the Department of Justice will be changing its mind on that lawsuit, but at least we've given it a try, and the ACLU will certainly stay tough on that.
And until President Trump, if he is indeed inaugurated, makes all these right-wing appointments, the courts are still fairly liberal and sane. Even some of the old Bush appointees are okay on some of these issues.
Even the 8-member Supreme Court holds some hope for us.
Right,
because,
but so this week in Indiana, a federal district court ruled that some deputy county clerk who didn't want to, on religious grounds, process a marriage license for same-sex couples, had no religious freedom grounds on which to do so. But again, they want to pass this religious freedom crazy act in the Congress, and Trump is for it, so watch out for that.
All right. Meanwhile, in the states, in Virginia, Governor Terry McAuliffe has issued an executive order, a non-discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity for state employees, contractors with the state, and has promised to veto the proposal by a legislator in Virginia for a, anti-trans bathroom bill and anti-trans parent notification bill. Really bad stuff, but at least we still have 16 Democratic governors who can stand up to that kind of thing.
The big editorial about the Texas transgender bill, which mimics the one
New York
in
Times.
North
I
Carolina.
appreciate it. I brought it in so I could wave it around because it's right there on the editorial page of the New York Times. Texas transgender bill idiocy.
Well, as we pointed out, the business groups in the state are like, please don't do this. I mean, you're just going to...
Well, let's get the details here. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has unveiled this new proposal, SB 6. It's very much like HB 2 in North Carolina, except maybe worse. But because it has been filed, a famous author from Texas, Rick Riordan, who has written the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, has rejected an honor from the state legislature because he's so offended by this bill.
And this is, now again, these bills are going to pile up all over the country. And remarkable, we were able to beat them back in Texas. We were able to beat most of them back in Oklahoma and other places. I'm just not so confident in this poisonous atmosphere in this country right now.
Well,
what will happen?
I'll give you some good news. In Arkansas, Governor Asa Hutchinson, who is a Republican, says he sees no need for an anti-trans bathroom bill there.
And we've heard that from other Republican governors who,
who understand the business implications.
Right. But I mean, if too many states do it, I mean, we've got a report now that California has, as of January 1st, is banning travel to
non-essential government travel to Mississippi, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Kansas.
Right. But I mean, again,
if they have to ban it to 40 states,
every place. And when are we going to start boycotting the United States of America over having an anti-gay maniac as the president of the United States?
Yeah.
How about sanctions against this country?
Good news from the District of Columbia, where new laws have been passed that legalize surrogacy for same-sex couples. and make it easier to designate the gender of choice on a death certificate.
How about what happened to Michelle Hearn in Boulder, Colorado? She's a registered dietitian at the community hospital there in Colorado. She was told to remove a rainbow flag screensaver from her computer or she would be fired. That this was
Boulder?
This was in Boulder, Colorado.
Seems unlikely.
Well, that's what happened, and so she is. A petition's been launched at the hospital by other employees to have to remove the rainbow flag as an objectionable symbol for people.
You know, if we're in trouble in Boulder, we're in trouble.
All right.
Okay. Well, and in fact, let's talk about some of the awful things. In Mississippi, Mesha Caldwell, 41 years old, a trans woman, is the first recorded murder of a trans person in 2017. Shot dead. A well-known local hair and makeup artist. I think we have a picture of Mesha Caldwell. Yes? No?
We do.
We did. All right. Well, we may or may not be able to get that up.
And in Newport News, Virginia, India Monroe was the 24th trans murder victim of 2016. This was an intimate partner violence-related homicide of an African-American transgender woman that occurred on December 19th, 2016.
And the second, okay, that's India. And the second recorded trans murder in 2017 occurred in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where Two-Spirit trans woman, Jamie Lee Wounded Arrow, 28 years old, was murdered.
And they do, well, they certainly believe it was to be a homicide, and they're investigating it as a hate crime.
Yes.
And then there was the death, the murder also of a guy named Savion Zabor, Z-A-B-A-R, Zabar maybe. Zabar, 54 years old. He was the former club owner of Esquilita, which was a very popular Latinx LGBTQ club there in Manhattan, Upper Manhattan.
And the former manager of XL, another well-known and popular club, strangled at home on the Upper West Side.
Now, in some other transgender, do you have some other grim transgender news? We got some positive things that happened.
Yeah,
we told you about the fact that Shiloh Quine was the first transgender inmate in California to receive gender confirmation surgery. And we just want to point out the fact that the way was paved by Michelle Lael Norsworthy, who we talked about last year, who was approved for this, who won
as an inmate.
As an inmate, but then they released her rather than provide the surgery.
But she is now managed finally to arrange for surgery, which she will have at the beginning of February.
And somewhat of a breakthrough for in the cosmetics industry, where Maybelline has made Manny Gutierrez its new, we have a picture, its new ad campaign person for the Big Shot mascara by Colossal. It's the first ever partnership with a man for this firm. There have been a couple of others.
CoverGirl, Milk Makeup, Anastasia, Beverly Hills have used men also. And the U.S. Coast Guard, which is not under the Department of Defense but under the Department of Homeland Security, has published its policy for trans service by its members.
And we told you about the transgender Indian national who was married to an American transgender woman, Nina Chobal, who was detained by the Immigration Service and put into
Arizona.
The Alloy Detention Center there, which is notorious. But because of a national campaign and the raising of money, was able to post $4,500 bond. I mean, it's just
she was just driving from California to the Midwest somewhere and got stopped by a checkpoint and didn't have the right papers and thrown in the detention center.
Which can be a nightmare for transgender prisoners.
Absolutely.
For any transgender prisoners.
Yeah.
All
right. Thank you to the state of Connecticut, which has removed the American Family Association from the list of charitable organizations that can receive state employee contributions. the American Family Association.
Well, they're going to be getting help from the Trump administration probably in terms of vetting judicial candidates.
Well, the AFA was eliminated because they failed to provide an anti-discrimination policy.
What about their religious freedom?
Yeah, exactly. Highlights magazine, which has been the subject of debate about whether they would feature same-sex families in their children's magazine, has finally come through and put a little story about your favorite. Send us a story of your favorite family trip. And they've illustrated it with a cartoon of two dads and their kids loading up the station wagon. Thank you, Highlights Magazine.
Well, they wanted to get that in before the Trump administration got started.
Yeah. Legendary gospel singer Shirley Caesar has come out in defense of Kim Burrell.
Yes.
And said she should have said her homophobic things 4 years ago when the president made it all right to be homosexual.
Now, in terms of Kim Burrell, Texas Southern University announced that her show, Bridging the Gap, can you imagine that was the name of her show, would no longer be airing on its airwaves. And she debuted that a while ago. And, you know, Ellen spoke out about this on her show and said, look, she said some very not nice things about homosexuals, so I didn't feel that that was good of me to have her on the show to give her a platform after saying those things about me.
But a very moving response in Orlando, Florida to the massacre of 49 people at the Pulse nightclub last June. The Orlando Soccer Club, which has honored the victims, decided they wanted to do something more permanent to honor the people killed at the Pulse nightclub.
So they did it at their stadium?
They opened a new stadium, and they did it with a section of rainbow-colored seats, and we have some video of that. With any luck.
Welcome to Section 12 of the new soccer stadium here in downtown Orlando. We're here to commemorate and unveil the 49 rainbow seats that will sit permanently in Section 12 of our new stadium as a constant reminder of the senseless acts of June 12th. You ready, team? Let's do it. Or regular season ticket holder seats. We put them in Section 12 obviously because we felt that was pertinent. It was June 12th, as you know, last year when the tragedy happened. So they're right here in Section 12. They're right down by the benches. They'll certainly be seen by everybody inside the stadium, and a very significant reminder of that day.
Very moving. I'm verklempt. It's also very nice that for those of you who are listening on the podcast, that all the rest of the seats are lavender.
Yes. I would call them purple.
I would too, but you know, I'm just
whatever
fudging it a little bit.
Yeah, they were. It's a wonderful thought and a wonderful gesture. All right, international news.
Well, in Taiwan, the Ministry of Health and Welfare said it plans to ban conversion therapy. Now, I don't know if they're just saying this for minors or is it going to be for everybody, but they will penalize any physician who attempts to treat patients with such methods.
And in Peru, a court has ordered recognition of a same-sex marriage performed in Mexico between a Peruvian man and a Mexican man. So this is now becoming more common that countries that don't legalize same-sex marriage themselves are starting to legalize or recognize marriages performed in other countries, and this may be the gateway to moving to legalization in their own countries.
In Somalia, the Al-Shabaab extremist group announced that it killed a teenage boy and a young man for engaging in sexual conduct. It's the first time that they've carried out executions over homosexuality. And in Mosul, I mean, I wasn't even going to mention it because they just do this constantly. They pick somebody out, they say you're homosexual, and they throw you off a building. They did it again to another. This is as they're being invaded, they have time to like execute people for these things.
And surprisingly, Pakistan has said that in its next national census, it is going to count transgender people for targeting. That's a bad.
Well, you got. I mean, you do have to be careful about getting on lists sometimes.
Well, speaking of which, in Russia, the health ministry there has a voluntary registry for those who are HIV positive. They're now going to make it mandatory.
What for?
To improve access to treatment.
Oh, I see.
But meanwhile, government health experts in Russia are blaming condoms for promiscuity and thus the spread of HIV.
It's something that we look.
1985 in Russia.
When so many politicians were resisting needle exchange, they said and many of them on the left, or at least progressive, were against it. It was going to encourage drug use.
Yeah. In Israel, a court has hinted that it will not legalize same-sex marriage and that it will leave it to the legislature to do that.
The Knesset.
Which is what happened in New York State years ago, too.
So, in entertainment news.
AIDS
AIDS
news.
news. Sorry, AIDS news. Well, I mean, of course, the biggest AIDS news, of course, is the fact that our health care system is being dismantled as we speak, and this is going to be a disaster for people with AIDS and the rest of us.
Well, and a detail of that
be paying attention.
Is that the new White House health policy advisor is going to be someone named Katie French Talento. She's anti-abortion, she's anti-contraceptive pills because they cause abortion and infertility and miscarriages and cancer. She believes the best route to HIV prevention is abstinence. She worked on AIDS issues for Senators Coburn and Brownback. And, she also believes contraception leads to eugenics issues and, you know, birth selection. And that transgender people are a materialist assault on human nature.
Sounds like the Pope.
That is your new White House. Okay.
Unbelievable.
Entertainment news.
Well, I mean, the film Moonlight, which we've been telling you so much about. Which,
love it, love it, love it. If you haven't seen it, you must see
African-American, gay
Moonlight.
theme, great movie, Barry Jenkins movie. It won for Best Dramatic Film at the Golden Globes. It didn't win others, but other awards, but it won that, and that was a big breakthrough.
It's huge, but it was expected to win that. And the problem is it was nominated for 6 Golden Globes, and that's the only one it won. And everybody was just shocked that it didn't win Best Supporting Actor for Mahershala Ali.
Yes.
And instead that went to someone in Nocturnal Animals, the Tom Ford movie, I suppose. Do we call that a gay win?
Well.
But it's in a separate category from La La Land. They do comedy musical movies and they do dramas.
But it also won the National Society of Film Critics Best Film Award. And it's got a host of BAFTA nominations, the British Film Awards.
Some, although not as many as expected. Barry Jenkins won Best Director at the National Board of Review, the first African-American man to win Best Director, man or woman. So that's big. So, you know, it's certainly going to be close. I think it's not going to win a lot of Oscars, if any. Maybe Best Supporting Actor, maybe Adapted Screenplay. That's another possibility. But it's going to be like second choice across the board everywhere.
I think we're going to have other things.
I think it's the first choice.
I think we're going to have other things in our mind next month. But we'll talk about it.
I think so too. But meanwhile, see Moonlight.
Yes. Also at the Globes, Sarah Paulson, an out lesbian, won Best Actress in a limited series for playing Marcia Clark in The People vs. O.J. Simpson. Lots of winners.
And the series won Best Special Series or Dramatic Series or whatever it is, and that's a win for Ryan Murphy.
And lots of, a number of winners were thanking their same-sex spouses, and but they also did a kind of a men kissing and dancing with men thing that was more of a joke than in some of the skits and things like that.
It's such the lazy fallback position for a lot of this.
Well, it's just, it's a joke when men you think are not gay are kissing.
Yeah, but we are showing up in unexpected places. Are you familiar with the series Sister Wives?
I've heard of it.
It's a polygamy show
right.
Maybe on A&E, I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't watch it, but it turns out that one of the daughters has come out now as a lesbian, Mariah.
In conservative Mormonism.
Well, they're fundamentalist Mormons, but they're also in support of same-sex marriage because they support alternative forms of marriage.
I had the hugest public fight with Errol Lewis, the journalist, because he wrote a column saying that this same-sex marriage decision, polygamy's next. And I said, well, what? I was screaming at him at a gathering.
Well, my answer is, so what?
Yeah, well.
If it's consensual and not exploitative.
Well,
now, that may be impossible, some would say, but certainly polyamory is something that people practice and support. And who are we to judge, as someone would say?
Yes.
But so the fundamentalist Mormons have supported their daughter coming out and are on record as supporting same-sex marriage. So on Sister Wives, we have a new lesbian.
For those of you planning your calendars, the Broadway play Allegiance with George Takei about the internment of Japanese Americans, and he was interred as a kid, is going to be on cinemas around the country on February 19th at 12:55 p.m. local time, which is the 75th anniversary of the Executive Order 9066, which Franklin Roosevelt imposed on the Japanese. So you can read about that at fathomevents.com. I'll put it in the email. If you want to get on our email list, go to our website, and there's a way you can click on get on our email list. We give you all the links to these things, background material, read about us, etc.
Boy George is in a little trouble, and not just for his work on The Apprentice, the Celebrity Apprentice. He's turning out to be a little cranky on there. He's having a little trouble getting along with people because he's very bossy. Carson Kressley's doing okay, and they both survived the first couple of weeks, so I guess that's something.
Is this with Arnold?
Yes, he's terrible. He's just terrible. And of course, Trump is celebrating and tweeting about the bad ratings because he wants to be the one who succeeded in that and not be, overtaken by his successor. But Boy George is in trouble because he said something about saying your computer was hacked is like saying you're bisexual. And people say, really? That's not an appropriate thing to say. People are bisexual. It's not a unicorn. And so he's sort of backtracked, but not really. And so, I continue not to understand why people have to make these kinds of judgments about each other. If someone self-identifies as whatever, what business is it of anyone else's?
Yes, we believe in live and let live.
We, for the most part. It's not that we aren't judgmental about a lot of stuff, but we try to confine ourselves to people's heinous acts rather than their self-definitions.
I remember the great liberal champion Bella Abzug, who was a congresswoman battling Bella with the hat and everything, and she was a great liberal, women's movement, anti-war movement. Her parents ran the Live and Let Live butcher shop in Hell's Kitchen.
Yes, they did.
But I wish I could say Live and Let Live with Cate Blanchett's Broadway debut, but I can't. The play is called The Present, and it's a variation on a Chekhov play called Platonov, which was reworked by her husband, Andrew Upton, who directed. Now, they did such a wonderful job with Streetcar Named Desire. Transcendent. But this thing was one of the worst disasters I have seen in my life. on a stage. It was just so repellent, the whole thing. It got a couple
And why was it repellent?
Because it was the dialogue was very stilted. It was not natural. They tried to update it from the 19th century to perestroika Russia, and it just I just thought the whole thing was you couldn't warm up to any of the characters. I mean, look, plays can be about negative things, and you can be enthralled by it, but this was just unwatchable.
And you had seen a different and better version of it.
David Hare, the playwright, did a wonderful version of it that was in London that I saw this past summer, and because there was some warmth to it as well, and it worked I thought it worked very well. By the way, speaking of David Hare, last week I was reviewing his new play, which I didn't like, called The Red Barn at the National Theatre, and I said it was based on a story by Maigret. Well, of course, it's based on a story by George Simenon, who wrote the Maigret detective series. I made a mistake there. We like to correct our mistakes if we can.
Oh, then let's correct the Robert Bork mistake.
Oh, right, that's a big one. Last week I said, yeah, we got rid of Robert Bork and we got Scalia. And Scalia was confirmed 98-0. Well, Scalia was confirmed 98-0 the year before, because what Reagan did was he moved Rehnquist up, who was appointed by Nixon, to, I believe I'm correct on all this, you'll stop me, to be the Chief Justice. That opened up an Associate Justice position. And the thing is, the Rehnquist nomination was very controversial. He got about 30-something negative votes, but he was moved up to Chief Justice. And then Scalia was put in 98-0. When Bork was knocked off, first,
the following year.
First Reagan put up a guy named Douglas Ginsburg, who it turned out had smoked marijuana, but Nancy Reagan was the vice president in those days, and that's an old joke. It's an old joke. It comes from anyway, and she of course was the Just Say No campaign on drugs, so they had to get rid of him. And then we got Anthony Kennedy, who wrote all four. He was conservative, but he wrote all four pro-LGBT rights decisions of the Supreme Court over 20 years.
Reputedly because he came from San Francisco and had gay neighbors who used to come over for barbecues.
I mean, William F. Buckley Jr. said, gays, we had a gay boarder in our garage once and where we had an apartment. I'm not anti-gay. Of course, he was anti-gay.
He wanted people with HIV to have it tattooed on their rear ends.
Yes, he did.
Not appealing. All right, you didn't like the president. I'm wondering, there is a controversy about Cher also, because she's been very active in the campaign against the poisoned water in Flint, Michigan. So now she's going to executive produce.
I don't know anybody who's for it.
Well, she's going to executive produce a TV movie for Lifetime called Flint about the whole debacle. And she's going to star in it. And people are saying, Cher, the people affected by this in Flint are African-American for the most part, not entirely. So there's some concern that the focus here will be shifted inappropriately. But, Cher is a smart person.
White savior kind of a thing?
Maybe. I think that's what people are afraid of. But I trust Cher more than that. And I think, look, she, as we were looking at Meryl Streep clips that included Silkwood, Cher was pretty down and out in Silkwood as a lesbian, and I think she's perfectly capable of taking an appropriate role. But yes, I would certainly hope there would be an appropriate emphasis. Speaking of which, I saw the movie Fences.
Yes. I love the play.
It's very well. Then you might like the movie because it's a play. It's very stagey. It's very stilted. It's about half an hour too long.
Nothing will stop the Viola Davis juggernaut for Best Actress.
I think that's true, and I'm fine with that because she is the most appealing thing in it, as far as I'm concerned, and the most natural. The language is very stilted, and it's a little hard to watch.
I'm an August Wilson fan, but I'll watch it. And
now we're going to go see the new August Wilson play.
Yes, Jitney.
Yeah,
well, it's not new, of course, but it's the first time it's on Broadway.
Yes.
It's only been performed off-Broadway.
I've only seen one of his plays before, Radio Days.
Yeah, I'm a big August Wilson fan.
Well, I hope we like
A
it.
genius. There's even an August Wilson Theater. That's where Jersey Boys have been playing all those years. I wonder what will come next that they're leaving.
You know, I was holding my breath at the end of the Golden Globes over Moonlight's nomination for Best Drama because I feared that Manchester by the Sea might overtake it as the supporting actor.
And you had as much trouble getting through Manchester by the Sea as I did through The Present with Cate Blanchett. By the way, I love Cate Blanchett.
I could not watch the whole Manchester by the Sea. It was so dreary and, to me, oppressive and so male in a way that was just, ugh. So I'm glad it didn't win Best Drama. I still fear that, you know, Casey Affleck will win Best Actor and whatever, but boy, was I amazed at how bad it was. And the other one I was really looking forward to seeing and disappointed in was Arrival.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amy Adams with the aliens. It was too talky and no action or very little action, and it was almost like an academic exercise and didn't make a lot of sense. Not that alien pictures should make a lot of sense, but I sort of longed for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I thought it was sort of a cheap knockoff of that.
Can we get back to the Resistance? Or you got some more entertainment news?
One thing, our friend Nora Burns is bringing back her production David's Friend, which we saw a few months ago. Yeah, it's a one-woman show basically that she does about her friend David, her best friend who died of AIDS, and it's funny, it's moving, it's really entertaining and good, and she's gonna do it at the club at La Mama from January 27th to February 5th.
David's Friend.
Really good, really worth seeing. Nora's terrific.
Really out there.
Yeah. So yeah, you want to talk about the Resistance? Go right ahead.
I'm just saying this is going to. I mean, this is going to be a busy week. I mean, in terms of demonstrations, big demonstrations on January 5th. You have to. I mean, you have to find things in your local area. January 15th is supposed to be Healthcare Day and Resistance. Obviously, January 21st, the Women's March, to which everyone is welcome. These are happening all over. The big one in Washington, all over the country. You know, and learn the numbers of your member of the House and your 2 senators, because what we're hearing is that as opposed to emails and even letters, that phone calls, which sort of disrupt the office, if you know, make the difference. And I'm sorry there's so much to protest, but weigh in on these things as they go by, so that the worst thing doesn't happen.
I was discussing with someone this week, you know, are younger people involved, and why aren't they to the extent they aren't? Some are, some aren't. And I said ignorance. People don't know enough, and so my message would be pay attention.
Yeah.
Watch these hearings, or at least watch the news coverage, or read a newspaper. Just stay in touch. Don't tune out, and be in this for the long haul. You don't have to devote your life to it. You can dip in and out, but you have to make an occasional phone call. You have to show up in the streets occasionally, and you have to be educated. And, you know, take Meryl Streep as your role model for speaking up, and take the people who stopped the destruction of the Independent Ethics Office as your role models for making a phone call, because it matters and it makes a difference, and we're in favor of that.
And we will continue to speak up and be back next week. We thank you for watching and paying attention to all this. We know it can be a little overwhelming, but we will tell you the good news as well.
See you next week.
Bye.